This question appeared on a video answering a previous question about how to create a PowerPoint slide for each row of an Excel list. And what this viewer wanted to know was basically how to expand upon that, to create slides that don't just contain text from the Excel workbook, but also contain images, audio files, and video files as well. So let's have a look at how that's going to work. I've already set up a basic Excel workbook with a list containing 3 columns. The first one contains some text that I'll use to set the slide title. The second column contains the path to a picture file I'm going to insert, and then the third column contains the URL of a YouTube video. To get started, I've already headed to the Visual Basic Editor, created a module and a basic subroutine, and I've already set a reference to the PowerPoint object library using Tools References from the menu. Let's add the basic code that's going to set up our basic presentation and a simple title slide. I'm going to use a few variables to help me with that. First of all, dim ppapp as PowerPoint.application, and then dim pppres as a PowerPoint.presentation, and then finally dim ppsld as PowerPoint.slide. Now I want to create a new instance of my PowerPoint application, so I'll say set ppapp equals new PowerPoint.application. Then from there I can insert a presentation using the application, so I can say set pppres equals ppapp dot, I'll spell that correctly, ppapp.presentations.add. And then finally I can insert my title slide. So let's say set ppsld equals pppres dot slides. I'm going to take the easy route here. I'm not going to use the modern method add slide. I'm going to use the slightly more old-fashioned but simpler to use add method. We've discussed this in previous videos on working with PowerPoint in VBA. So the index of the slide I want to create will be number 1. I want it to be the first slide, of course. And then the layout is going to be a simple pp layout title. Now I know on a title slide there are 2 text boxes, and I want to set the text for each of those. So I'm going to say ppsld.shapes, and then refer to the first shape using its index number of 1. Then I can refer to its text frame 2 property, then the text range within that, and then finally the text within that. And at this point I can now set a simple title for my slide. I'm going to call this one Video Presentation. Rather than writing all that out again, I'm going to quickly copy-paste that line, and I want to set the text for the second shape on the slide, so I can simply change the index number of the shape I'm referencing to the number 2, and then let's change the text so it says something like Wise Owl. Okay, let's give that one a quick test. If we run that code, we end up with our very basic presentation, 2 text boxes, and we're ready to add the extra parts. Next, I'd like to loop through the rows in my list to create a new slide for each item in it. So I'm going to start my loop from range A2 and carry on looping down to the end of that list. There are lots of different ways to do that, as you'll be aware if you've watched previous VBA videos. I'm going to use a for each loop, which means I'll need an object variable to hold a reference to each individual range object in the collection I'm going to loop through. So I'm going to declare a variable called rng as a range, and then I will begin my for each loop to say for each rng in. I'll refer to the sheet 1 object and then refer to range A2 in there. That represents the first cell. And then the last cell, again, there are many choices for how you can capture this. I'll use a quick simple approach. I'm going to say sheet 1 dot range A1 dot end Excel down. I'll close off the loop a few lines further down. I'll say next rng. And now inside this loop, we can generate a new slide for each row of my table. So to do that, I'm going to say set ppsld equals pppres.slides. And then again, rather than using the add slide method, I'm going to use the old-fashioned add method instead. To set the index number of the slide, I want it to be 1 more than the current total number of slides in the presentation. I want each new slide to appear after the end of the existing list. So to do that, I can say pppres.slides.count, and then simply add 1 to the result. The type of slide I'd like to insert this time is going to be a pp layout title only, and that will leave me with just a single text box on each slide. So Just so we can see something interesting happening, let's set the text for the first text box, or the first shape on that slide. So I'm going to quickly copy and paste the code I used to set the title of the main slide. And then on my new slide, I can set the text of the first shape to be equal to rng dot, and then I want a property that returns the value or the text contained in that cell. So I can refer to the text property in this case. Value works as well, by the way. It's entirely up to you. I know there's only text in that cell, so value or text, both will work happily. So having done that, let's have a quick look at the results. If we run that code, we end up with our new presentation and one slide for each row in that Excel list. So we're getting somewhere now. Next, let's deal with inserting a picture on each of the slides we've created. And to do that, we'll need to reference the value of the picture path column in our list. To help out, I'm going to declare a new variable that will give us a reference to the shape object we're going to create. So I'll say dim ppshp as powerpoint.shape. And then, after I've set the text for my slide, I can say set ppshp equals ppsld dot shapes dot add, and then picture 2. I'll spell add properly, there we go. Add picture 2. Now there's a number of parameters you need to pass a value to, and the first most important one is the file name of the picture you're inserting. So I know that that's in the cell that's offset one column to the right of my range object, so I can say rng dot offset 0,1, and again either dot value or dot text will work. Then I need to specify whether I'm linking to the file. I do want to link to the file rather than embed it, so I'll set the link to file property to true, and then the save with document property to false. The final two compulsory parameters are the position of the object based on the number of points starting at the top left-hand corner of the slide. So the left parameter indicates the number of points from the left of the slide that you want the left of the shape to appear. Let's indent it by 10 points. And then the top, let's set that to something like, I don't know, 200 arbitrarily. We'll deal with that in a more sensible way in a moment. Just for now, let's first of all run that and check what happens. We will hopefully see from the preview there, we can see that our pictures are being inserted, 10 points in from the left, 200 points down from the top. Not really leaving much space for anything else on the slide. So let's spend a bit of time sorting out the positioning and the size of that object. I'd like to set the size and location of my picture objects based on the size and location of the title text box on each slide. There are several ways we can make that work, but a quick simple approach. I'm going to comment out the line which inserts my pictures just for the moment, and then I'd like to print out some information about my title text box. So I'm going to use a debug.print statement, and I'm going to debug.print the left-hand position of that object and its width property as well. I'm reasonably happy with the position of the top of my picture, 200 pixels down, 200 points down from the top of the page, seems fine to me, but it's the left-hand edge I want to get lined up with the text box. So with that done, let's run the code to get some information into the immediate window. We can then just immediately close down that presentation because we don't need it. And we can see, of course, 3 copies of the same thing because we've got 3 slides inserted. But importantly, this is the distance from the left of the slide to the left of the text box, and that's its width. Now that we've done that, let's comment out the debug.print statement and bring back our code that will insert our pictures. We can set the left of my picture objects to 66 points. And then let's see if I wanted to get my picture to be half the width of the text box. If I type in a comma at the end of the parameter list, that will bring us to the width parameter, and we can set that to 414. It would make sense, I guess, in the real world to store these values in variables and calculate them rather than typing in these magic numbers. It'll make it much easier to make modifications later. But just for now, I'm going to keep with the basic, simple approach. So let's see what improvements or otherwise we've made if I run that code now. Okay, so we can see that our pictures are now positioned in line with the left-hand edge of the text box, 66 points in from the left-hand edge, and they are indeed half the width of the text box, as you can hopefully see there, judging it just by eye. The downside, of course, is that the picture isn't sized proportionally, so the height is all wonky. Let's fix that. I'm going to go back to the Visual Basic Editor, closing down the presentation without saving any changes, and instead of setting the width in the Add Picture To method, I'm going to do this separately. Once I've inserted the picture with its regular size, I'm going to say ppshp.lock_aspect-ratio, and I'm going to set that property to MSO true. Then I can individually set the width of my shape by saying ppshp.width, and I can make that equal to, that's that magic number again, 414. So if I do that and I run the code one more time, we will end up with pictures sensibly positioned, I think, on the slide, occupying about half of the slide itself. So that's looking pretty good so far. Next, we'll look at inserting the video file. Inserting a video file works in basically the same way as inserting a picture file. Let's set our ppshp variable to be equal to ppsld.shapes.add_media_object_to. So a special separate method for inserting videos and audio files as well, apparently. I'm only going to deal with video files in this video. Apparently audio files work in the same way, so I'll leave that to you to experiment with. Again, we need to provide the file name, although in this case it's going to be a URL. And again, we've got that stored in a cell that is this time 2 columns to the right of the range object we're looking at. We can again refer to the value or the text of that cell. I'll go with text. Again, we can say whether we want to link to the file. So I'm going to say MSO true. And we're going to say save with document MSO false. I don't want to embed these videos in my PowerPoint presentation. Then optionally this time we can set the left top width and height properties. So I'm going to set the left to be equal to the sum of the distance from the left-hand edge of the shape to the left-hand edge, left-hand edge of the slide to the left-hand edge of my picture and the picture's width, so that's 480. And then I'm going to set the top to exactly the same as the picture, 200. And let's set the width. Let's see what happens this time if I set the width to 414, so it's the same width. I'm not going to bother setting the height. I'll just set the width property there. This one's going to take a little longer to run, but let's give it a whirl anyway. If we start running our code, you can see the slides are very slowly being created. You can see a bit of a hint there. PowerPoint is inserting media in the status bar. And it takes a little while for each one to appear, but eventually, at any moment now, yay, there we go. So each slide now has a picture and a video file. If we just run the presentation, you'll see that as you scroll through, the video preview will appear, and then you can click the button to play it embedded in the slide.
This question appeared on a video about you.
Nobody likes hearing their own voice on videos, so I'm going to stop that fairly quickly. So there you go. There's the basics of inserting pictures and videos. You'll notice that the video player is designed to be resized proportionally, so you don't have to fiddle around with locking the aspect ratio. That all worked automatically. So hopefully that was sufficient to answer the original question. I think it is. If you've got more questions, as always, drop them in the comments below and I'll see what I can do about answering them. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.